Foster's home isn't an orphanage, it's a morgue, and every imaginary friend inside is the ghost of a dead child. Craig McCracken didn't create a cartoon. He documented a mass grave from the 1950s Riverside Children's Hospital fire. 104 children died. 104 imaginary friends live at Foster's. The math isn't a coincidence. Madame Foster isn't kind. She's trapped, forced to care for the spirits of children she failed to save 60 years ago. And Mac? He's not visiting his imaginary friend. He's visiting his brother. You remember the premise? Children create imaginary friends. When they outgrow them, the friends go to Foster's home. They wait for new children to adopt them. Happy, colorful, heartwarming, but you never ask the obvious questions. Why do imaginary friends have physical form? Why do they need food and shelter? Why do they age, feel pain, and fear death? Because they're not imaginary. They never were. The show tells you exactly what they are in the first episode. Mac's mother says, and this is a direct quote, "You're too old for imaginary friends." It's not healthy, not silly, not childish, not healthy. She knows what Blue really is. She's trying to save Mac from the truth, but Mac can't let go. He can't abandon Blue because Blue isn't imaginary. Blue is Mac's twin brother who died at birth. Here's what shatters everything. The creator's notes, leaked by a former animator in 2017, describe each friend's death origin. Not creation origin, death origin. Every imaginary friend corresponds to a specific way a child died: wilt, car accident. That's why he's damaged. Missing an arm, crooked body. He apologizes constantly because his last words were, "I'm sorry" to the driver who hit him. Eduardo, scared to death, literally. A child who died of fear during a home invasion. That's why he's enormous but terrified of everything. His size is what he wished he was. His fear is how he died. Coco, plane crash. Her gibberish isn't random. She's speaking the fragmented last words of everyone on Flight 847. The eggs she lays? They contain memories of the other passengers. Memories nobody wants to hatch. But here's what breaks your brain. Foster's home opened in 1954, the exact year Riverside Children's Hospital burned down. 104 children died in their beds, trapped, abandoned by staff who fled, left to burn because nobody thought they were worth saving. The children were all psychiatric patients, kids with behavioral issues, kids who saw things that weren't there, kids who talked to people nobody else could see, kids with imaginary friends. Madame Foster was a night nurse, the only staff member who stayed. She tried to save them, led 37 children to safety, but 104 died, and she never left the building. Not the physical building, that burned down, but the psychic imprint, the echo, the place where traumatized spirits gather. She opened Foster's home on the same ground, same address, same floor plan. She's not running an orphanage, she's maintaining a containment facility. Watch any episode with this context. The friends aren't waiting to be adopted, they're waiting to be released, to move on, to accept they're dead, but they can't because they don't remember dying. That's the rule, the one rule that actually matters at Foster's. You can never tell a friend they're dead, never remind them of their past life, never explain why they exist, because the moment they remember, they disappear. Not adopted, not moved on. They cease to exist. The delusion that keeps them corporeal collapses. And Madame Foster loses another child she failed to save. Mac knows this, subconsciously. That's why he won't let Blue be adopted. Adoption means accepting death. It means letting go. It means admitting his brother is gone. The opening credits tell you everything. It's a beautiful day to be roaming free, but they're not free. They never leave the property. They're roaming inside prison walls. Beautiful walls, colorful walls, but still walls. Terrence isn't Mac's brother. He's Mac's guilt. The older brother who survived because he wasn't at the hospital that day, who carries the weight of being the twin who lived. That's why he hates Blue. Blue is proof that Mac can see the dead, that Mac knows Terrence should have died instead, that Mac chose to save his dead brother's ghost instead of loving his living one. But that's not even the darkest part. The unproduced episodes reveal everything. There's a script from 2006 called The Day Before. It shows a 24 hours before each friend arrived at Foster's. Not their creation, their death. Wilt is shown playing basketball, a real kid. Happy, talented. The car comes out of nowhere. The last thing he sees, the scoreboard showing he was winning. That's why his basketball obsession isn't funny. It's tragic. He's forever trying to finish the game that killed him. Eduardo's scene is darker. A small child hiding under his bed, footsteps approaching, his parents screaming downstairs, then silence. Then the footsteps reach his door. The script just says, Eduardo closes his eyes and imagines being big enough to fight back. He never opened them again. Coco's death is different. The script describes her as a girl who spoke 13 languages, a prodigy, on a diplomatic flight with her parents. The plane loses pressure. As oxygen fails, her polyglot brain misfires. All 13 languages blend into one impossible tongue. That's what she speaks now. The last words of a dying genius whose brain collapsed all human language into gibberish. But here's what Cartoon Network buried. There's a character who appears in background shots, never speaks, never interacts, just watches. Credits list them as the photographer. They're always holding an old camera, 1950s style, taking pictures of friends when they're not looking, developing them in a red room in the basement nobody talks about. The leaked script reveals who they are. The photographer is the arsonist, the patient who started the hospital fire, who died in the flames they created, who now documents every spirit in Foster's because they're trying to count, to see if they killed them all, to know when their punishment ends. 104 friends, 104 victims. When the last one moves on, the photographer can too. But Mac keeps Blue there, keeps one spirit trapped, keeps the cycle incomplete. That's the real conflict. Not whether Blue gets adopted, whether Mac can let the dead rest, whether one boy's grief is worth trapping 104 souls in purgatory. Cheese isn't annoying. He's brain damaged. The script describes him as a child who survived the fire for 3 days before succumbing to smoke inhalation. His brain, starved of oxygen, reduced him to basic impulses. I like chocolate milk isn't random. It's the last normal thought he had before the smoke reached his ward. Herriman isn't Madame Foster's imaginary friend. He's Dr. Herriman, the hospital administrator who fled, who left the children to die. His rabbit form, that's how the children saw him as he ran. A coward rabbit hopping away while they burned. He serves Madame Foster now as penance, enforcing rules because he broke the ultimate rule. First, do no harm. The episodes where friends get adopted, watch carefully. They never show the children who adopt them, never show them leaving. The friend just disappears while everyone waves at nothing. Because there are no new children. There's just acceptance. The friend finally remembers who they were, remembers dying, accepts it, and dissolves. That's why everyone cries during adoptions. They're not saying goodbye to a friend, they're watching a child's soul finally admit it's dead. World, the friend who claims everyone loves him. He's the collective spirit of 17 children who died in the same ward. They were so young, so close to death that their spirits merged, became one entity desperate for the love they never got to experience individually. His ego isn't narcissism. It's 17 dying children crying, "Please don't forget us," in unison. Here's what Craig McCracken was actually documenting. The show isn't fiction, it's a confession. McCracken's grandfather was a janitor at Riverside Children's Hospital. He was working the night of the fire. He had keys to every ward. He could have saved them all. He saved none. He ran, left 104 children to die, lived with the guilt for 40 years, told his grandson everything on his deathbed in 1999, gave him a box of photographs he'd taken of the hospital, pictures of the children, the real children. McCracken spent 2 years matching every photograph to a death certificate, every child to a cause of death, every face to a story. Then he created their imaginary friends, gave them the lives they never got to live, the powers they wished they had, the forms they dreamed of becoming. But here's what destroys everything you thought you knew. Mac isn't a random kid. In McCracken's original pitch, Mac's full name is Malcolm McCracken, Craig's son, who died at age 8, 2 years before the show premiered. The entire series is Craig trying to explain to his dead son why he created Fosters, why he filled it with the ghosts of dead children, why he can't let them go. Because letting them go means admitting Malcolm is gone too. Blue isn't Mac's imaginary friend. Mac is Blue's imaginary friend. Blue is the real dead child. Mac is a projection of who he might have been, the living version Blue creates to interact with the world. That's why Mac is the only human who regularly visits. Why no other children's parents are shown. Why Mac's mother barely acknowledges him. She's not ignoring her son, she's tolerating her dead son's ghost puppeting an imaginary living child. Watch Mac's behavior. He has no life outside Foster's, no school friends, no hobbies, no personality beyond protecting Blue. Because Mac doesn't exist except as Blue's creation. The twist isn't that imaginary friends are real, it's that the humans are imaginary. Every child who visits Foster's is a projection, a puppet, a way for the dead to pretend they're still connected to the living world. Goo doesn't create imaginary friends rapidly. She is hundreds of fragments of children who died in the fire trying to reconstruct themselves. That's why her friends are so unstable, so temporary. They're failed attempts at remembering who she used to be. The house itself isn't a building. It's a mass delusion, a shared afterlife created by 104 dying children and one guilty nurse. Every room represents a different ward that burned. Every floor is a level of acceptance about being dead. The friends on the first floor, newly dead, still in denial. The ones in the attic, almost ready to move on. The ones in the basement we never see, they've accepted the truth but refuse to leave, waiting for something or someone. Madame Foster isn't old. She's aging in real time since 1954, 1 year for every child she failed to save. She'll age 104 years before she can die, can join them, can finally apologize in person. She's currently on year 69, 35 more years, 35 more children to release, then she can rest. But Mac won't let Blue go, and Craig McCracken won't let Mac go. And the cycle continues. Here's what nobody noticed. Every episode title is an epitaph, a tombstone inscription. House of Blues, House of Blue Children, cyanotic from smoke inhalation, store wars, stored wars, the battle to store memories, the big picture, the final picture, the last photo before the fire. Squeeze the day, seize the day, carpe diem, because tomorrow you die. The background music, analyzed by audio engineers, contains reversed audio. Slowed down 800%, it's children singing. The same song, over and over. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. A plague song, a death song, a song about burning. But here's the detail that breaks everything. In 2009, Foster's home ended. The final episode, Goodbye to Blue, never aired in America, only in Japan, with different animation, different voices, different ending. In the Japanese version, the house fades away, the friends dissolve, Mac disappears, and we see the real location, an empty lot, a memorial plaque, 104 names, and at the bottom, a new inscription, plus one more. Malcolm McCracken, 1996 to 2004. The show wasn't about imaginary friends. It was about real children, dead children, forgotten children, children whose only crime was being different, being difficult, being diagnosed with conditions we didn't understand, children who were locked away, left to die, erased from history, until one guilty grandfather confessed, one grieving father created, one dead son refused to let go. There's one more piece of evidence, one that McCracken tried to bury. In 2018, urban explorers found the ruins of Riverside Children's Hospital. Hidden in the basement, protected by concrete and time, they found a room, the photography lab. Hundreds of pictures still hanging on the lines, pictures of children, but something's wrong with them. Each child appears twice in the same photo, once normal, once different, distorted, transformed into something else. The explorers posted 3 photos before their account was deleted: a tall boy with a basketball, and next to him, a red creature with a bent arm, a small girl with a suitcase, and beside her, a bird thing speaking in tongues, a tiny boy hiding under a blanket, and above him, a purple monster cowering. The metadata on the photos: 1954, 3 months before the fire. The photographer wasn't documenting victims, they were documenting transformations. Children who were already becoming something else, already seeing themselves as monsters, already dissociating into imaginary friends. The fire didn't create the spirits, it freed them. Foster's home isn't where imaginary friends go when children don't need them. It's where child spirits go when the world doesn't want them. And Malcolm, Craig McCracken's son, he didn't die in 2004, he died at birth, 1996. Twin brother absorbed in utero. Mac and Bloo weren't fictional. They were Malcolm and his absorbed twin, separated in death, reunited in animation. Craig didn't create Foster's home, Malcolm did, in crayon. In a sketch found after his death, a big house where all the friends could live forever. Craig just animated his dead son's last wish. Every episode, every friend, every joke, it's all Malcolm trying to tell his father, "We're okay here. You can let us go." But Craig couldn't, can't, won't. The show ended in 2009, but Craig still draws them, still posts sketches online, still adds new friends, new children, new spirits to the house that never existed, because admitting Foster's home isn't real means admitting Malcolm isn't either. And for some parents, for some creators, for some guilty survivors, that's a truth too devastating to accept. Riverside Children's Hospital was real. The fire was real. 104 children really died. Forgotten by history, erased by shame, replaced by a parking lot, but their stories persist. In animation, in imagination, in the space between real and pretend where all ghost stories live. The question isn't whether Foster's home for imaginary friends is about dead children. The question is, why do we prefer our ghosts colorful, funny, and safe? Why do we turn trauma into entertainment, pain into profit, dead children into cartoon characters we can control? Maybe because of the alternative, remembering them as they really were, suffering as they really did, abandoned as they really were, is too much truth for anyone to bear. Even their ghosts chose to be imaginary friends rather than dead children. Can you blame them? Can you blame us for watching? The real question is, which imaginary friend were you?